welcome to Forbes India's Pathbreakers. I'm Neha Bothra. This is a show where we bring you conversations with inspiring pioneers, global leaders who have a huge impact in their fields. Today I'm at Mariwala's house to talk to him about his journey, his struggles of building Marico and his aspiration. Hello and welcome, sir, to Pathbreakers. I'm so happy to welcome you on the very first episode. It's so great to have you.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this show, and I'm truly delighted that you're launching this show and that you're having me on the show.
You know, Mr. Mariwala, you are a role model for so many people. They think you have the perfect life. You've built a great company, you have great health, you're very particular about your lifestyle as well.
True.
What they do not realize perhaps is the series of struggles you had to go through to come to this point.
Yes.
So when you look back at the previous decades, do you get the feeling that everything happens for a reason? The age-old saying, you know, that everything happens for the good.
So by and large, yes. Everything happens, there is always a positive side, there's always a silver lining to an problem. So in my case, it has happened multiple times, so that belief that everything happens for good has got reinforced many times. Most of the time there will be silver linings. Sometimes, you know, if it is not in your fortune or in your destiny.
I think the biggest disappointment perhaps for you was not being able to go to a B school to do a MBA very early in your life.
Yes.
I think that was something you held very close to your heart. And that was perhaps a blessing in disguise because you just ended up learning so much more in terms
True.
of getting a practical idea of how things work on ground.
Got it.
And now Marico is a case study at B schools.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The fact that I could not get into a B school or business management school in India left me with a little bit of how will I manage a company, because I always wanted to recruit very good talent, a talent which was professional in terms of qualifications, capability. There are always ways to overcome that lack of formal education by studying short-term programs, by reading many books, by interacting with thought leaders. And what I have tried to do is that I did all that. And I still continue doing that, so that it just updates you. And learning is lifelong, and I've seen many leaders who are open to learning. They are searching for meaning, they're searching for solutions by talking to other individuals, trying to improve themselves.
Indeed.
And I think that for those leaders, the business has done extremely well. Their lives also, personal lives have also has been a very good life, and there is no end destination. It's a journey.
When you were working as part of a huge family business,
Yes.
and you needed the consent of, you basically needed to bring everyone on board to go ahead with what you want. Do you think that that particular phase helped you to foster collaboration, to work with people, take teams along with you? Team building as a concept, do you think that was the nurturing ground for that?
I would say that apart from team building, I think the larger learning for me was that all the stakeholders who have a stake in a certain issue, I was able to convince the family to allow me to take the business of Bombay Oil Industries, consumer product business, into a new company, Marico. And that took 2 to 3 years. It required a lot of thinking, involving others, and a lot of persuasion, determination, grit, which made that happen. So looking back, I think those 3 years were well spent, because if I had not done that in a proper manner, I would still be battling some family issues. So to me, the learning was, for critical changes you want to bring in when there are multiple stakeholders who are getting impacted, it's better that you build a consensus, you involve them to make that change happen.
Also innovation, I think that is something you worked upon very closely. The whole shift from moving from, say, 5-liter packs to consumer-friendly packs.
Yes.
I think all that was insightful and based on consumer feedback. So you were also very open to taking feedback from the market.
Yes.
How important was that in terms of building your leadership potential in the coming years?
So I think one big problem with many leaders today is that they think they know it all. And I think if you see some of the downfall of some leaders, it's mainly because of that ego coming in. Or saying that I know it all, I don't need to talk to others. To me, it's the opposite because I had not learned anything in a management school, so there was that hunger to learn. And when that hunger translated into very good results, that reinforcement came in that,
Okay.
I have to constantly learn, I have to be constantly open to others, I have to constantly go on searching for answers. So I think that's very, very important for any individual to succeed. And in our innovation journey also, whenever we are trying something new, we tend to talk to potential customers. We talk to the trade who could be our intermediary for selling our products. Get their viewpoint, incorporate that viewpoint so that as and when you actually are launching that product, you have handled all those issues, and the chances of you succeeding if you have done insighting properly are much higher than if you have not done it.
I remember one very important episode that was about Hindustan Unilever trying to take over Marico. And what was very interesting was your keen understanding of competition in terms of knowing what the strengths of Unilever are and
Yeah.
knowing what
Yeah.
strengths are of Marico. So typically in a business situation, what strategy works in terms of getting a better understanding of competition? How do companies go about it?
So I think one is to constantly study what others are doing and constantly updating your knowledge about competition. It could be from visiting market, it could be from some research study which has been done by an analyst, it could be from past employees. Many times I have done interviews just to get more information. Again, you have to try and tap
Be a
some
little
unusual
imaginative.
routes to get information.
So give us an anecdote when you tried doing that and it really helped Marico in terms of refining its strategy, be it in terms of marketing or even otherwise, getting an edge in the market basically.
So I think the biggest example which you talked about is about the Unilever when they wanted to enter the coconut oil segment, and it was a big threat because they were 10 times larger than us in terms of turnover, capacity to spend, better distribution. And my whole analysis based on various people I met, starting with Karsan Bhai Patel to my internal team to finding out how they will handle it in levers. I mean, I realized that we can take them on because on the product they couldn't have done much. We already had a very superior product. We were weak on advertising and on distribution, and that's where that crisis helped us improve our distribution. We were not impacted, and over a period of time, we actually acquired their brand, which was threatening to us.
Also getting a pulse on trying to understand how to innovate better in terms
Yes.
of bringing out
Yeah.
something which is constantly evolving. How have you achieved to do that?
A few innovations in my early stages of my journey just worked well. It was not following a certain process, but converting the whole market from tins to plastics in case of coconut oil had a huge, huge dividend. So my belief in innovation has started from very early days of success. And since then, we are trying to build a culture of innovation, which means that you need to have very good talent, you need to have diversity, you need to empower people, you need to have flat organization structure, you need to have an open environment, a trusting environment. You need to encourage people to take risks, you need to remove the fear of failure. So when you combine all these things, and you have to go on demanding innovation from your people. So when you do all that together, then the chances of innovation emerging from within are higher.
How have you used the tool of negotiation in your strategy? How have you sharpened that, sir? If you can share some tips with us.
See,
How to
in
be
the
a good
business
negotiator?
we are in, we don't need to negotiate. It's not a B2B business where I need to negotiate with you for selling some of the products. It's a B2C business, and I don't even know many of our customers because it's so mass. So the need for me to negotiate has been very, very seldom. And in the earlier days, I used to look after the industrial relations at our factories, and I had to negotiate with the trade unions. And I think that opened up my eyes because, we had 2 strikes of 6 months and 1 of 3 months. The first strike, I wanted to tire them out and ensure that they will never fight back with me. But it was a win-lose negotiation where I won and they felt lost. So that was really haunting. So within a year, we had 1 more strike because they were feeling they had lost. And at that time, I realized that if I have to succeed, it has to be win-win negotiation where both the parties at the end of that negotiation feel that it has been a fair deal to both of them. So fairness is very, very important in driving very important negotiations. You may take advantage of an opportunistic situation in some cases where you have an upper hand, but at some stage if you have to negotiate with that party again, it will come back to you
backfires.
because they will try to take a revenge on that loss which they had suffered earlier.
Indeed, sir, over the past few years, you've taken a very keen role in the area of mentoring many of
Yes,
these
yes.
founders.
Yes.
Technology is at the forefront of all the innovations we are talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you feel these founders are geared in terms of building a very solid business plan, something which will really sustain in the coming years? Not just about disrupting a certain industry, but
yeah.
about building a long-lasting enterprise. What is your view of this, sir?
So I think first of all, the founders or any entrepreneur has to realize, where am I winning? Why am I winning in the marketplace? Is it an innovation I have, or a pioneering initiative I've taken, or a technology, or very good service if you're in service industry? So I think you need to identify what is making you win in the marketplace. And then secondly, that win has to be, you have to continuously work at it because it's a matter of time. Others will copy you. So you have to be 2 steps ahead of your competition. And the key thing is to be the best in that area so that what you're offering to the final consumer it makes sense, it's innovative, and that helps you keep the edge in success in your business.
In that sense, yes, sir, there's been a lot of disruption. I mean, we do have startups that are responding to some critical needs of customers. Yes. But the way it's happening, the cash burn that's happening, for instance, particularly in the e-commerce segment, it's not avoidable entirely, but the fact that it continues beyond 10 years, going up to 12, 15 years, is that a concern for you? Do you think this is an area where maybe entrepreneurs are going wrong and they need to course correct?
So I felt very strongly that you just can't drive top line. At some stage, it has to reflect in bottom line. So I think what's happened in the last 6 months specifically is that most of the funders have now realized that this cannot be indefinite. And the funding has to some extent reduced, some cases become much lesser. And now most of the funders are saying, I want to see visibility of bottom line. They're willing to wait, which is fine. I don't expect each and every business to start making money from day one in terms of profits. And growth is very important. But at some stage, that business has to turn profitable. I think that shift has happened in the last 6 months. So I see that many businesses which were burning much more money, now they become far more cost conscious because the funders have put the necessary pressure which was required. So I think that's a good development. I, for one, believe that any business has to be profitable. For short term, you can pursue growth, but at some stage, it has to make profits. Otherwise, you can't just go on burning money forever.
I think another key area is corporate governance, which is really at the cornerstone of any organization to be sustainable in years to come. At Marico, you try to do that. You are on several corporate boards, and it's an area you follow very earnestly as well. What do you feel about the quality of governance across companies in India?
So, governance is a very vast subject. One is governance means compliances. Are you complying with the law? So that's a very basic definition of governance. What you are saying is much more than that.
Deeper than that, yes.
So you have to look
following it in letter and spirit.
Yes. So I think to answer your question on the second question which you have, I think things are improving and organizations are looking at having an independent board of directors, getting their viewpoint, looking at, there's always a conflict between the organization and promoter in many cases. And one doesn't know what is right. So the thumb rule which I use is that the organization's interest comes first and then the promoters. So if some decision is to be taken, for example, when it came to me stepping down as the managing director of Marico, I just used that thumb rule. What is good for Marico? Should I be continuing or should I be stepping down? And we came to the conclusion that I should be stepping down. So though I was not ready for stepping down, I stepped down. To me, that's good governance. If I'm using some space of Marico for my personal need, it could be for some giving activity, it could be for running my family investment office. One way is to say, okay, the company belongs to me, but other way is to say the company doesn't belong to me. I'm one of the promoters, I'm the promoter, I'm the founder, but I have many shareholders. So I have to differentiate this. So I have to pay to the company the area I'm using for my personal use in terms of a rental. To To me, that's governance. And the
So
biggest
it's not
problem
the
with,
promoter's company, it's the shareholders'
especially
company.
if it's a public limited company, and the problem with most promoters are they think that this is their company. So, moment you have that mindset, then you will do something which is in your interest and not the company's interest. But that has to change, I'm saying.
How can
It will
this change be brought
It will
about?
change. The change is brought about by the stakeholders who are getting impacted. Stakeholders like investors. You have advisories, you have investors, you have your own employees who are asking for governance. So I think there's a lot of stakeholder pressure is coming. No amount of law will have an impact beyond a point. But the fact that there is a lot of pressure, good, well-governed companies get good valuations. So these are all market pressures which is making entrepreneurs, promoters to move in the right direction.
You spoke about the time you wanted to step down, and a very natural outcome would have been to have a family member come and take over. Were you asked questions?
Yeah, it's at the starting point is the Indian society is very hierarchical. They expect, Indian entrepreneurs expect their children to follow them in that role. But now the business has become far more complex, it's far more competitive. It's difficult to win comparatively compared to what it was maybe 20 years back. So the best man should rule the company. So again, the organizational interest comes first. It is difficult to accept that because the whole society expects that your children will step into your shoes. So it was difficult, but I took that decision and I think it's worked out well. Both from the point of view of shareholders, now the family is accepted, my son is doing his own business which is thriving in that, so it's a win-win situation.
Over the years, what does Marico mean to you? Has it changed? I mean, you were building Marico in your 20s, 30s, and then you were managing a company that was relatively well respected in market, and now you are the chairman of the board. How has your equation, relationship, how do you look at Marico now, sir?
So it's been, for me, it's like my children tell me this is your third baby. So it's been a lot of involvement, a lot of pride. I made mistakes, but it's okay to make mistakes. I have built that into, I have converted that from a small business to medium to large, and now an institutional which will survive beyond me because I have put in those processes, those people who will be in charge of business even something happens to me. So things like strategy of the organization, purpose of the organization, values and culture of the organization are very well defined. And then the role of the board, professional board, independent board. So I've created an institution which will last for perpetuity.
And you fought tooth and nail for it. But sir, today, if you were to get a similar offer, the kind you got decades ago from Unilever,
Yeah.
how would you respond to it, sir?
I still go on getting offers, selling out. But I think to me, money is not important, What will I do with money? I can spend that money even if I want to do it today also. I don't need more money. So, but you need that satisfaction of creating something is you can't equate that with money.
So you would not sell out Marico. It's your child.
Yes.
Sir, the world is changing, technology is evolving rapidly. What aspirations do you have for Marico at this point? What further leaps do you want Marico to take to be among global players? It's present in many countries. What can it do really to become an Indian brand to reckon with in international markets?
So I don't think our vision is to go in all the countries. We realize that it is very difficult looking at our portfolio products to go into developed markets. So we have defined as a strategy that we will be only in emerging markets in Asia and Africa. So that's where we'll try and expand. We will not go global. Now the whole business model of Marico also, or FMCG, is changing. Now you have D2C brands, which are managed in a completely different way. So we have decided to participate. We have acquired 3 D2C companies. We also have our own D2C brands, kept them at a different location, manage it differently. And these are disruptions. You have to participate in those disruptions from an opportunistic angle and not from a threat perception. So I think that's what we are trying to do. We would like to be an important D2C player in addition to being a traditional FMCG player.
So given the kind of startups we have in the consumer space, consumer tech rather, would you be looking, what kind of opportunities make sense for you in terms of acquisitions, in terms of basically broadening your offerings?
So we are
what
very
makes
focused,
sense?
in terms of geographies. We are focused in what we call beauty and health. So we will mainly be looking at beauty and health as our areas and not go beyond that. We will not go into detergents or we will not go into household products and things like that.
Mr. Mariwala, thank you so much for taking time out and speaking with us. It's been a very insightful conversation. In fact, a masterclass for me. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I enjoyed our conversation and all the best to you.
Thank you, sir.